continued from last night.
Mr. Starr, we'll call the roll, and then you can raise your question. Thank you. And let me get logged in while she's calling the roll.
Okay. Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Gutierrez. Here. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Birch. Here. Mr. Clayman.
Here.
Dr. Selcraig. Here. Ms. Drummond. Here. Ms. Osiander is excused. Mr. Flynn is excused. Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Coffey.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Starr, you had a question. And because I will just quickly say before you raise your question, it is my view that this is a continuation of last night's meeting, which is why we are not saying the pledge again. But Mr. Starr, raise your question.
Well, sir, last night we adjourned, which you requested a special meeting after adjournment, and we don't continue upon adjournment. We either need a special meeting or not. There was not a motion to continue tendered last night before the meeting ended.
Mr. Starr, there was a question that was raised on the Internet this morning. I think Ms. Osiander raised it. When we sent out notice of the meeting by email, the clerk then communicated with Rhonda Westover, Deputy Municipal Attorney, to the question about whether or not we could proceed as a continuation of last night's meeting. The clerk and Ms. Westover, my understanding is they reviewed the last 5 minutes of the Assembly meeting last night on video 2 times, and after watching it, it was the opinion of Ms. Westover that we could proceed as a continuation of last night's meeting, and that is the basis upon which we're going forward.
Well, I protest that because I don't believe that occurred. I think what we did was we adjourned. At the time after that adjournment, you called a special meeting. So I guess I question the legality of this meeting from a continuation perspective and what the public believes we're actually doing. We called a special meeting last night. You distinctly discussed the times that we could have a special meeting, and it was referenced to special meeting. So my clarity is that we had a motion on the floor to adjourn. It was seconded by myself, and the meeting time ran out. Traditionally, and by, I think, charter, when the meeting runs out, we are done.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Coffey's in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I asked some of these questions, what I wasn't clear about was whether or not there was a time log that runs with the recording log. And what I was told is that the clerk and yourself, look at the clock in the corner of the computer, and, you know, what I would look at, I wasn't here, as you know, what I would look at is the clock in the back of the room or something, and I think no matter what is the issue here relative to timing on last night, we ought to have a clear understanding amongst all of us, where do we make those determinations. And I had a second comment, and that is if we bring up things tonight that are controversial and might lead to litigation, a wiser course might be, look, unless there's a true rush, let's put it off till the next meeting to avoid someone being able to say that's an illegal meeting, it was 11:01 and whatever, as Mr. Starr indicates. So I would just urge caution there. So if we could have an official clock agreed upon by all of us, and then that cautionary word. And I thank you for your time, sir.
And I would just note, Mr. Coffey, in your response to your question, interestingly enough, our computer screens that are in front of all of us don't have a time for the elapsed time of the meeting, but they actually don't show a time. What I have always relied on for purposes of looking at time, because the clerk has a separate computer that is on the Internet, and my assumption is that clock is coordinated with whatever world clocks seem to be connected to the Internet.
It's not the clock. I didn't see a clock on mine. When she told me this, I guess she's referring to a clock on her own computer?
Exactly. I can look over here.
But that doesn't tie into our...
And see a time.
And it might behoove us to get a tie-in so that we know. And then it's absolute. We either were or we weren't.
Right.
So I'd hate to have a lawsuit on like garbage fees and find out that we were 29 seconds over. Thank you.
Dr. Selcraig.
I'd just like to note that actually I called to reconsider, and we actually voted to reconsider before our time expired, but the problem was the machines didn't reflect the vote, and so we had to re-vote. So part of what happened at the end of the evening, we were right up against the clock, but we had a whole lot of glitches in terms of the system, which cost us another 5 minutes. So I think, fundamentally the vote did occur.
But if we go over, We are
Mr. Coffey,
adjourned without motion.
Mr. Coffey,
Yes? If we go...
hold on.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Selkirk has the
Well,
floor.
my point is that if we had already voted not to go over, but it hadn't recorded on the board, I think that the fact that the vote took place was important. The fact that we had trouble recording it was the second issue.
Okay.
There's a lot of things.
And I would just, in response to that question, I actually think from a standpoint of code and statute that if the time is past, the fact that the machines are failing is not an excuse. That would be my perspective. Mr. Starr.
Well, and that said, I'm back to the clarification on a continuation meeting. Can I have sort of a legal statement on the difference between a continuation meeting and a special meeting? A continuation meeting takes formal action from the chair to request such a thing. Otherwise, we formally adjourn. I've seen filibusters on this very body that occur for that reason. Is that they want the meeting to adjourn and not continue. So when your claim, as you did at the header, was that this is a continuation meeting of last night, it eludes something different than a special meeting to come together to finish our work. And I find that there's noticing requirements on special meetings that are different than continuation meetings. So I distinctly remember watching the clock in the back, speaking to my colleague, that it elapsed. If we're fungoed in process and machines are failing, the charter says 11 o'clock, we're done.
All right. Well, thank you,
So
Mr. Starr.
what I'd like to know
in
is-
response to your inquiry, let me inquire of the municipal attorney. I see Mr. Reeves is here. Mr. Reeves, if you can provide us, first the question Mr. Starr is asking is what is the difference between a continuation meeting and a special meeting? If you could explain that difference. And the second question is, what is your opinion about whether we can proceed tonight as a continuation meeting, having explained the difference?
Mr. Chair, I'm not prepared to answer either of those questions because I've never had a reason to research them. But I know that the clerk and Ms. Westover looked very carefully at this morning, spent a good deal of time on it, determined that it was legally appropriate and permissible for this meeting to occur. And I believe they understood that this was to be a continuation of last night's meeting. I assume that means that you're on last night's agenda and that is the only agenda for the meeting.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, does a continuation request require action from the chairman before the meeting adjourns?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, I don't know. I haven't researched it. Perhaps the Assembly Council, Ms. Tucker, knows.
I would actually, the clerk has the email from Rhonda Westover available, and I'll ask the clerk to read her written correspondence.
This was sent to all of you at 11:28 this morning. Barbara and I just watched the tape of the last 5+ minutes of last night's Assembly meeting twice. There was a verbal motion to adjourn, Osiander, and a second Starr. However, there was no vote, and Robert's rules allows the chair to entertain a privileged motion or motions, including consideration of a motion to extend or continue the meeting. Further, by definition, the presiding officer chair may call a special meeting. AMC Section 125.005. A special meeting requires 24-hour notice, except where a special meeting is called by agreement of the majority at a regular meeting with all Assembly members present.
I'm back to the same question. I don't recollect you continuing. What I remember happening after 11 o'clock was you called a special meeting. All members weren't in attendance last night. So my point is, sir, we're in a special meeting without public notice.
Mr. Starr, you have stated your position, and I understand the position. Mr. Coffey's next in the queue. Thank you. All right, Ms. Drummond.
I'm not sure what the parliamentary rules say on this, but I have to say that I'm very disappointed in this body for not extending for half an hour, 45 minutes last night, so we could have finished what we were doing, particularly some of those who voted no, who weren't going to be here anyway. They're wasting a lot of people's time, and I wish we'd just get on with it. I believe I recall the chair declining to accept the motion to adjourn, and it would be good if we could refer to the video ourselves. I see it's not posted online yet. I'm sure it takes some time for the clerk's office to get that in place.
All right, Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One quick comment that I want to make. We have a new chair who, quite frankly, I think is doing a fine job. It's a hard job sitting in that seat, and I haven't done it before, but I know that it is. And I can tell you one thing, as far as I'm concerned, whether or not it's a special meeting, was called a special meeting or a continued meeting, I really believe in my heart that our chair meant that we were going to continue this meeting. That's it. That's all. Let's get busy, folks. Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that getting the process right is tedious and frustrating and inconvenient, but there's a reason we have a stringent process like this. And I think I also want to echo Mr. Coffey's comments that we should be exceedingly cautious tonight, given that there is some question, that there may be some controversy, that to echo what he said about not wanting to end up in a lawsuit over something that otherwise would have been a fairly trivial exercise for us. I do understand the frustration that we didn't continue last night. I did vote to continue, but we didn't have the votes. I blame Mr. Coffey for that, by the way, since he wasn't here. But I would urge us to be exceptionally cautious in how we proceed this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no one else is in the queue. Our next item is item 13B, Resolution AR 2008-99. 13, we already took a public hearing on that, and the thing that was moved was the 2008. The clerk has recommended, and I would actually ask us to move back to 13A, which is AO 2008-67. That was one of the two IM ordinances. What was moved was 2008-84. And for matters of record cleaning the records, I would entertain a motion to postpone 2008-67 indefinitely. Ms. Drummond has moved.
So moved.
But you've clicked in. I need a second. Dr. Selcraig has seconded. There's a motion to continue indefinitely.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Should I get out of the room? As again,
you don't need to leave the room. You can just not participate.
I won't want. Okay.
You could get up and leave, I think, and it's safer. He hasn't been here the whole time.
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry.
Hold on, Mr. Kendall. Mr. Gutierrez is in the queue. First, Mr. Gutierrez speaking to the motion. All right. Mr. Starr, did you want to speak to the motion on the floor?
Well, procedurally, in aiding the chair, it's a public hearing noticed item. Don't we have to open the public hearing and then close it? Or
actually, we don't, because the public hearing on this was closed last night. It was open and closed last night.
So we jointly moved them together? Is that what we did?
We jointly moved them together, and in fact, had that not been joined with 2008-84, the public hearing on 2008-67 was closed on June 24th. Thank you, Mr. Starr. Any opposition to postponing 2008-67 indefinitely? Hearing and seeing none, that matter is postponed indefinitely. I would note that Mr. Coffey not participating. Mr. Kendall, what's your point of clarification quickly?
Well, my point of inquiry is, as I tried to understand last night the Roberts Rules of Procedures, and as a citizen, I just feel compelled to call for some understanding, because even last night I was confused and would like to volunteer myself as a witness as to the state of confusion. But even more importantly now is that as a member of the public, you're moving so quickly that it doesn't afford me an opportunity to be able to see how to participate in your proceedings. And I thought that's what this was all about.
All right.
Well, the clock, I would suggest that I've asked for many, many times, spending millions and millions of dollars, just a simple clock to avail us with a bit.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate the inquiry, and where we are in terms of agenda is we're following the agenda from last night.
But I don't understand how.
So we're at 13. We just finished with item 13A, and we're now moving to item 13C. 13B. I apologize. Resolution number AR 2008-99. A resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, confirming and levying assessments for the sewer special improvements within levy upon connection. LUC Rule 08-S-1, setting date of payment and providing for penalties and interest in the event of delinquency. Public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter, please come forward. Just I would note that you have a chance to speak, but I want to make sure you're speaking to the topic at hand. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm not certain that I understand all of the topic, and due to the fact that you hold many of these meetings outside the perusal of the public, I feel compelled to be able to break this open and understand it further.
Point of order, Mr.
And
Chairman. Point of order.
Mr. Coffey.
We've got a short meeting on short notice. We all have other plans. I'd like to hear from Mr. Kendall on 2008-99, not a speech on our supposed meetings outside of this body, which don't happen. Thank you.
Mr. Coffey, your point is well taken. Mr. Kendall, this has to do with a levying assessments on special sewer improvements. If you have anything to say on that, I'll hear your comments. If you have nothing to say on that, then I will agree with Mr. Coffey that you're out of order and ask you to return your seat.
But as I understand, I'm out of order because I'm making inquiry because he's on a short meeting notice. Is that where we're?
Yeah,
I missed the.
Okay.
I just certainly didn't mean to dispose the emphasis from Mr. Coffey to some public inconvenience, sir. And maybe we should have this dialogue some other place, some other time.
That'd be fine.
Yeah. I guess my concern is this, that I've tried to mention to you as a public that represents our welfare and benefit, that water is becoming a foundation for many, many fuels, technologies, and energies. And anytime I see an assessment for some type of delinquency of water, I think we need to put that inside of a formula. And that formula needs to take the price of a single family or what we would call a dwelling. I think the Census Bureau refers to them as a housing unit. And in Alaska, there are about 300,000 of those currently, I believe, is pretty close. So I think if you're just going to assess some type of from what I can tell, it's an increase in the charge for that. Is that what that is? Again, because you're seeing these things outside our view, I'm just concerned about that there should be some formula to understand the means primarily for the single family or the residential unit, because we have to break out the difference between where our families reside as shelter and commercial, industrial, institution, and military. If we do not find stability in those sectors, we will never understand some of the formulas that are making our society come apart, and actually we're now eating each other in some parasitical or predatory manner on the taxes, and I think we're going to have to pay closer attention to water, because water is becoming a fuel. It's coming at us like a freight train. It's just not the water coming out, but the water that's also the wastewater. And I thank you for the opportunity. I do hope to comment on everything that's a public hearing tonight. So if you'll please avail me in some concise and clear manner. And if somebody has a problem with me, they should be able to step up and let's have that verbiage done. So thank you.
As long as you're on the topic, we're happy to hear what you have to say. Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Mr. Coffey is in the queue. You may have. All right. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body? Mr. Coffey has moved, Ms. Gray-Jackson has seconded, and I see Ms. Handyside on behalf of the administration. Go ahead.
Yes, I wish to make an amendment to this item.
Go ahead. This has been distributed as the page in front of us.
Yes, and according to the Assembly's request for zero waste, I've tried to put on a very small piece of paper. So I thought you'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Page 1, line 26, please replace September 30th, 2008 with October 31st, 2008. Page 1, line 28, replace September 1st, 2008 with October 1st, 2008. And on page 3 of your packet, there is a list on that page. Remove from that list, line 6, the following parcel 019-102-24-000, Skyway Park Estates, Block 8, Lot 12A.
If you could click second, Mr. Coffey.
Okay.
It was moved by Dr. Selcraig. Well, Ms. Drummond beat you to it. Seconded by Ms. Drummond. If you could explain the reason for the amendment, Ms. Handyside.
Yes, there's a gentleman who has been trying to, who has some issues with this particular luck roll, and AWWU, in the interest of providing him ample time to review the issue, is removing him from this particular roll and will probably add him to the September luck roll. So this is to give the public a little bit more time to review this issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Coffey.
Thank you. If this is one of those items that has time to review, and if it was on the list last night, I certainly hope not, but Is there, what I'm concerned about, luck rolls frequently engender litigation because people are dissatisfied. Are we going to create a situation here where those who have to pay more because of this gentleman's removal are going to be unhappy and will be in this illegal meeting allegation or not?
Mr. Coffey, I can actually, this matter was on before us on the 24th, and the gentleman whose property has been taken off the list came and spoke to several members of the Assembly with his questions. He actually asked for a continuance to the 15th, but he said he would be out of town. It didn't appear that he was able to resolve his questions with the department, and so in deference to his travel, we actually are taking him off and putting him on for October so that he'll have more time to communicate with the department before we act.
But what's the consequence for the others if their share increases? I don't know this. I'm just asking.
I think Mr. Primo could answer that.
Mr. Primo.
Through the chair, Mr. Coffey, this is a levy upon connection rule. It's for individual assessments for connection to a line that was previously put into place. It is not the aggregate special assessment district, so taking them off the roll does nothing to the other costs.
I got you. Thank you, Mr. Primo.
All right, I see no one else in the queue. Ms. Drummond.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I noted from the map that these properties are spread all over town, including the majority of this amount of nearly $230,000 to the school district. It looks like it's for the new high school. I think it's the new high school in Eagle River. Is that right, Mr. Primo?
Through the chair, Ms. Drummond, I do not know which school district site that is.
10. In any case, I take great interest in these as I am a member of a community well in the Spenard area, and we benefit from the sewer assistance that AWWU provides, but we generate our own water, and these are merely attachments to existing sewer lines.
That is correct, through the chair, Ms. Drummond. The Levy Upon Connection program is a different program than the general assessment program. When the utility puts in a line in the street for their own benefit, the utility benefit, if there's ratepayers' money involved in putting that line in, then we do assess adjacent properties when they connect to that line for that pro rata cost, just with respect to that line in front of that property. And so this is a line that was put in a number of years ago or just recently, and when the property owner desires to connect to that line, on their decision, we inform them it'll cost this amount of money, choose to hook up or not. And so this is their decision, pre-informed what the price will be.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
I appreciate Ms. Drummond for bringing the question up. I suspect this is probably for Chugiak High School. Eagle River High School has been connected since it was built on city water and sewer. So Chugiak is now under a major upgrade project, if you recall, to get Chugiak High under sewer connection.
Right.
My challenge on that is the dates. If we're going to assess the school district on October 31st, starting the clock, if you will, they're several miles away from having any benefits of hookup. Is that what the normal process is?
Through the chair, Mr. Klayman, Mr. Starr, I'm not sure which school district site this is, but that might be a reasonable assumption. And that project is under construction right now.
Okay. Well, again, with the assessment charges continuing or to start on October 31st, as
no property owner will be charged an assessment until the project is used and useful. In other words, it's available for their use. And so I can do the research for you and tell you specifically which line the school district property is connecting to and when that date of use and usefulness for that project was, and I can provide that to you at a later date if you'd like.
Well, again, if it was a couple $1,000s, it'd be no problem. It's $229,000, and again, we've got a long way to go with the Old Glen upgrade and the turn of the corner there with the miles. They're digging through hard rock out there now. So my challenge is, are we going to start collecting that, or as it says, is it truly a levy upon connection or a levy upon this action tonight?
It is a levy upon this action tonight for the date that is set in the ordinance that's in front of you. What I can't inform you of tonight is which parcel of land that is. I have the same information in front of me as you do, sir, and I feel a little prepared on that, and I'll for sure.
Yeah, I should be prepared, and I'm not, but
yeah.
Again, it was only raised.
Let me leave it this way. I'll do the research. I'll get back to you. If by chance there's an error in the roll and we are connecting someone that doesn't have a line that's used and useful, which would be improper, we will come forward and remove it from the roll of a separate ordinance.
Well, I surely don't want to start paying $229,000. We may not even hook up this year if they don't finish.
I hear you loud and clear, sir.
Great. Thank you very much.
Dr. Selcraig.
We had a work session a while back, and it involved, I thought, the high school in Eagle River and the need to extend, it was sewer, I believe, and the issue of the expense associated with it, and some discussion about how to distribute that expense in a different manner so that those people with large properties along the road wouldn't be feeling the kind of significant impacts that they might feel because of their large properties. Is that correct?
That is correct, through the chair, Ms. Selcraig, Dr. Selcraig. And there's a work session scheduled for that on the 29th of July to discuss that issue.
All right. Maybe I'll talk to you a little bit about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Drummond.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. I'd like to point out the map attached to the memorandum shows property number 10, which is the school district property, just north of East Eagle River Loop Road. I don't think that's anywhere near Chugiak, and it's either it might be a future selected school site. I couldn't tell you, but Mr. Starr, if you see what I'm talking about, I believe that that's in the neighborhood of the new Eagle River High School.
Thank you, Ms. Drummond. No one else is in the queue. First, as to the amendment, any opposition to the amendment which takes one property off the list? Hearing and seeing none, the amendment is adopted. Now, with regard to item 13B, as amended, is there any opposition to approval of 13B? Hearing and seeing none, that item is approved unanimously. That brings us next to item 13D. We've already gone through 13C and referred that to the Parks Commission. I would note on this, I will open the public hearing. I would note that I know that Ms. Osiander and others have had several questions about Heritage Land Bank. It would be my recommendation that we, after opening the public hearing, we continue this until August 12, which will give us a month to have a work session on Heritage Land Bank so people can be more informed before acting on this. I will open the public hearing on item 13D, AR 2008-121, a resolution approving updated Heritage Land Bank policies for management of Heritage Land Bank land and the Heritage Land Bank Trust Fund. The public hearing on that matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard that can't wait until the next public hearing in August, please come forward. Mr. Kendall.
Excuse me, sir. Yes. I think it was, does he have to say something to you or to me?
You're supposed to stand, sir, unless you're handicapped.
The guard has apparently been advised through his supervisors that it is the policy that if a person is not handicapped, when they speak to the assembly, they are expected to stand. And I can see that you are very capable of standing.
So I guess point of order here. I'm not sure what you just said. I went to get a chair to sit down as a normal person. This guard, is it? I didn't get your names. What's your name?
Mr. Kendall, Your Honor, you need to speak to the topic.
And the security officer denied me the right to sit down. Is that what I just gathered?
You can sit down, but then your testimony will be over when you sit down.
And why is that?
Because you're capable of standing.
Well, I suggest to you that's a judgment call, but for the time being, wanting to be affirmed Mr. Coffey, I'll probably agree to that moment.
Well, Mr. Kendall, all I can tell you is that when people appear before every court in the land, unless they are disabled and have to sit in a wheelchair, they take the honor of standing in front of those they are addressing, and I appreciate the fact you're taking the time to stand before us.
Well,
if you would like, I'll stand with you.
Please, I like that. That's great. Were you going to come down here and stand with me up there? Or? Thank you. I guess now I'm kind of disheveled in my thinking because I thought I'd come down and get a seat at my own expenditure of energy and time so that I might be a decent...
You're off topic. You need to speak to this matter.
Well, I thought that the injustice itself took some type of precedence over the normality of everyday business, but...
Your testimony will be over if you don't get on topic quickly.
Okay. Well, as far as the Heritage Land Bank, I have not seen... I just went to get some literature out there to review it, and I didn't see anything there. So I would ask for some type of an update because, again, you folks have these meetings outside the public, and I'm not aware of that. But I'd like to have the opportunity to comment, but it's being denied me. if you don't update or review it to bring us up to speed on it. So I just continue to make the case that you're doing business behind the scenes or back channels to where I can't really participate as a public member. I guess that concludes, and thank you so much for disallowing me and nobody standing, especially a U.S. senatorial candidate standing on my behalf, to be able to sit down as an American. That is a magnificent moment. I think.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to learn.
When the public hearing is reopened, we will note that you've had your opportunity to speak on this matter. Anyone else wishing to be heard? I will not close the public hearing at this point. Is there a motion to continue the public hearing? Moved by. Looks like Mr. Starr moved and Ms. Johnston seconded it. Mr. Birch, were you in the queue as to this motion?
I just would like some information between now and the next time we have the continuation on maybe kind of a summary of expenditures, and sales, and I'm sure that information is readily available, but I'd like to have some kind of a summary accounting of how much money has been raised and how much is expended on an annual basis, primarily because of a concern that some of us have had regarding are we spending as much as we're taking in on an annual basis with that operation? Thank you.
That's fine. Just for clarification, Mr. Coffey, that was moving it to, or actually, Mr. Starr moving to August 12. Thank you for that clarification. Ms. Gray-Jackson, you're next in the queue. So it's moved to continue public hearing until August 12. Go ahead, Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, why are we postponing this? I remember from not the meeting last night, but the meeting before last night, Dr. Salcraig had handed out a couple amendments, and we were moving along. So I'm trying to understand why we're postponing this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't see Mr. Maynard in the office. Are you upset about moving it, or you want to not?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Starr, I'm not upset about anything. I just wanted to understand why we're postponing it. I just don't understand that. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Speaking with you, did you have your question answered? Okay. The answer that I would give, in my understanding, this was set when we originally had a Heritage Land Bank work session scheduled for July 11. And because Mr. Maynard was traveling on that date, we canceled the work session on July 11th, which was actually the space in the time that allowed us to have the MLNP work session that happened on the 11th. And so the work session that we wanted to have in advance of acting on this was canceled. And so in deference to those that have questions, and because there's no time-critical nature about acting on this tonight, then based on those things, I'm recommending that we take it up to the 12th, which gives us time to have the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I missed the work session conversation, but I truly understand now. Thank you.
Dr. Selcraig.
I have a couple of questions. One, I do have an amendment to propose, but I can do that later.
The public hearing the motion is to continue the public hearing.
So
I'll
take that action later.
That's right.
But I also wanted to just advise the administration is that when we do have that work session, I'd be interested in understanding the kind of the distinction in roles between the Anchorage Community Development Authority and the HLB in light of the land that they both hold land and kind of what they're, I happened to go to the meeting, the Community Development Authority meeting the other day, and they're disposing of a fair amount of land. And just to get a kind of an idea of, what's the criteria, do the criterias match, and that would be really helpful. Mr. Abbott. Thank you.
Mr. Coffey. Thank you. I support the motion to continue the public hearing and subject to that work session. And secondly, the reason I'm supporting it is because Ms. Osiander has taken great interest in this, and her comments and wisdom would be helpful to me before we make this amendment. So I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. As no one else is in the queue, I'll ask if there's any opposition to continuing the public hearing until August 12. Hearing and seeing no opposition, that matter is continued until August 12.
At which time?
In the ongoing process of legal advice, Assembly Council has advised that with regard to continuation meetings, it is her view that when we do a continuation meeting, we should only address matters that are urgent and need to be acted on prior to the next scheduled meeting of this body. I know from last night the municipal manager and the mayor had provided me a list with the items that they felt were time critical, which I believe to be items 14C, 14D, 14E, 14F, 14K, 14L, and 14O. Is that still the case, Ms. Handyside or Mr. Abbott?
Yes, and the one that you already dealt with, which was 13B.
Right. I would.
Mr. Chairman, I was writing down.
That's okay. We'll go through it again. I would ask Dr. Selkirk to make a motion to change the order of the day to take up those items.
I'd like to move to change the order of the day to 14C, 14D, 14E, 14F, 14K, 14L, and 14O.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Selkirk, seconded by Mr. Coffey. Any opposition to changing the order of the day? Mr. Starr, you're in the queue. Did you want to speak to that motion?
14E and 14F, to me, I'm questioning the time certainty. I know there was some discussions amongst this body and administration to get those brought forward for conclusion, but budgets have been approved and operating amounts have been funded. I'm questioning the need to move E and F tonight, specifically with a body that doesn't have all of its members represented. Mr. Flynn has.
I get the question. Let me get the administration answer. Mr. Abbott, Ms. Handyside, do we need to act on it tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We strongly recommend that you act on it tonight. Planning for future investments and future actions, as well as commitments made to the commercial and the commercial hauler community, require us to begin to post these rates as soon as possible. We've committed to them that we thought we would have this information available to them by the end of July, or excuse me, by the middle of July, and as a result, we're trying to act on that and meet that commitment, which was consistent with a commitment from Assembly leadership several months ago.
Mr. Starr, in light of that answer, if you want to make a motion to amend the motion of the day to take those out, I certainly.
Some of the question was for the administration, but is also for the body's consideration. On Mr. Flynn's not here. He's got quite a few users in his district that would be heavily impacted by the rate increases, and I was hoping he could weigh in on the debate. Ms. Osiander, with her contributions on the trash discussions, the recycling initiatives, and all of that, I also feel that this is one of those gray areas that may be questioned in the difference between a continuation meeting and a special meeting. So I would just urge caution that however quick it needs to happen, I would say that, in my opinion, July 29th still meets sort of the July time frame, and I would say that that's a critical item of question.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Starr, and I apologize for interrupting you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Do you want to make a motion on that issue?
Well, the motion to change the order of the day, I can't support that with E and F being considered, so I won't be supporting the motion that's on the floor.
Because you could move to amend that order.
Well, I can if you'd like me to do it that way, or just speak to it and let it go through. But I would like to amend by removing E and F from the change of the order of the day.
Second. All right, so it's been moved and amended. We'll take, and I see three in the queue. Did it want to speak?
I have nothing to speak to other than the caution.
Anyone wanting to speak
body.
to Mr. Starr's motion?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Coffey, go ahead.
For the reasons stated by Mr. Starr, including the absence of Mr. Flynn and Ms. Osiander, and the concerns that we've had a very contentious issue on these rates, I understand from the administration that this is basically a continuation of a plan we've gone down the road on. But I don't understand why the urgency exists over 2 weeks when we know for a fact that all of, like the garbage bins don't get here till October, and all of these other things are coming down the road. Why we would miss Mr. Flynn and Ms. Osiander's input, and why we would risk on a contentious issue the issue around this meeting that we discussed at the beginning of this meeting. For that reason, I'll support Mr. Starr's motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I see 4 people have put in the queue. If you would like to speak to this motion, please say so. Ms. Gray-Jackson. This is to the amendment. Mr. Abbott, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I've just been alerted by Mr. Madden that one of the key elements of this is the ability to order the individual types of cans that the Assembly, I believe, is aware that we're trying to put in place to begin the curbside recycling program. in order to deliver those, we should have ordered them already, but we're waiting for the rates to be locked in, which is what is the action that's before you this evening. So that's an even more pressing issue that requires us to seek Assembly action this evening. I apologize about the confusion in my earlier comments, Mr. Chairman.
That's okay. Ms. Johnston, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, I just wanted further clarification. So you're saying that there'd be a possibility that you wouldn't be able to start recycling on October 1st if we delay this for 2 weeks? And is this, the other clarification, is what we have in front of us, is this everything that we agreed to when we passed our recycling bill a month ago? Is there anything in here in addition, or is this all part of the package of our recycling?
Through the chair, this is all part of the original package, and probably the only thing that is of any change is the smallest garbage can size for the automated collection. Now, the timing, though, is fairly critical because, as Mr. Abbott stated earlier, we need to put in our order to get these roll carts fabricated, shipped here, assembled, and delivered to the customers in time to start the program. We also need to get the customers signed up for what size garbage cans they would like, and until we get that item nailed down specifically, we can't even start producing the advertising materials to we can't finalize the advertising materials to pass out to the public. So we're kind of at a standstill until at least Section 4 of the ordinance that's before you is dealt with.
And I know that we did have some problems as far as the size, and to be honest with you, I read this weekend and I can't remember now. Did you, because of the size difference, you were talking about having an every other week one recycling, the other trash. Have you established that, or is that all still is that in a state of flux?
That's in this ordinance before you right now. And basically, it will be, if you elect to do the every other week garbage service for the very small quantities, otherwise everybody else gets weekly garbage service, but if you want to go to the very small quantities, it's the same week that you get your recycling, you get your garbage picked up. It gives you half the size and a smaller rate.
With that information, I would be prepared to address this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Many are in the queue. Dr. Selcraig, as to the amendment that would take these two items out, did you wish to be heard?
Pardon, would you restate the amendment? I'm sorry.
The amendment, Mr. Starr's amendment, would have us not act on items 14E and 14F tonight.
Actually, I'm in agreement with Ms. Johnson, and for much the same reasons. It seems to me that we've already vetted the content of this. We've spent a long time, and what we have before us is actually an action item based on a whole lot of deliberation. I'm also, it seems to me that, and I keep remembering our work session last winter where we are actually running at a deficit. Is that true in terms of residential trash pickup or refuge pickup? Is that we adjusted our rates and it wasn't really tied to what our costs were, and it's my understanding that what we're looking at here begins to move us to tying our rates to cost. Is that true?
That is correct. When we raised the tipping fee rates for our disposal utility back in January, we raised the rates on everything except commercially hauled residential garbage.
Right. And so this begins to fix that. So I don't think that there's anything new in this box. I think we've vetted it very carefully. So I'm going to not support the amendment and hope that we vote for it tonight.
And Mr. Starr, did you want to be heard as to the amendment only, not to any substance of the?
Yes, I still am firm in the E and F holding. And again, and I don't want to debate the topics necessarily, but the financial picture is different. It's dealt with in F. The budget's been increased through previous action. That takes care of it. What we're trying to do is move public rates for curbside and residential. We also have to acknowledge that there's a public hearing tied into this. It's not a formality. It may be for us, but there's a public hearing opportunity, and there's nobody from the public here to testify. And I'm concerned about the gravity of the situation, and I don't want the special session to call into play. So furthermore, if in fact E and F have to stay on there, I'll ask formally to be excused from the meeting or request to abstain or just leave. And it's not to do that in a spiteful way. I'm all about process, and I don't think we're being prudent here. By a 2-week delay, we've been told many times that the can purchase was either funded through garbage truck purchases way back when, or the purchase order was hinging on this or that. And I asked Mr. Abbott this afternoon specifically the question. Maybe you didn't have the answer. It's unfair to put you on the spot, but it would have been prudent that we had that information before. So I urge caution, and I guess I can't continue under good public process with it included.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Starr. Anyone else? There's anybody that wishes to be heard on this particular issue of amending or changing of the order of the day? I don't see anyone. Mr.
Chairman, I just want to make, Mr. Starr, I just checked with staff and the finance organization as well. I believe we can delay action on item F, which is the appropriation item. That one can wait 2 weeks. It's simply the rate piece that is the driving force behind the operational concern that Mr. Madden discussed a few minutes ago. The appropriation item, the department will remain funded for 2 more weeks. And you were right earlier. We can fund the capital acquisitions for the recycling program certainly for the next couple of weeks without the appropriation change. And so perhaps it would be more acceptable to you, Mr. Starr, if the request for immediate action this evening was limited to 14E. Yeah, 14E.
Mr. Starr, would you be comfortable taking up 14E, or you feel the same about both of them?
Well, you know, quite frankly, F is a little easier to chew on because it's really just sort of a budget adjustment formality housekeeping. So the full debate on how we manage that and what we're really getting for the bang of the buck is that. And I understand the 48 can size is now reduced, but we marketed a pay-for-throw program. I want people to understand what they're getting for their rate increase. And we're just not giving the public the best bang for the buck by just debating it under a noticed meeting that's kind of questioned. And representative of no one here, it concerns me, and I'm still of the debate that E and F should be removed and delayed for 2 weeks. So if you want to process it more, I don't want to take any more time debating it. If you want to move it to a vote, that's
all right,
great.
I will go ahead. Mr. Coffey, did you want to be heard as to the amendment?
Here's, Mr. Chairman, you will recall this. Yes, on the amendment, absolutely. You will recall this. When I was chairman, I asked you, Ms. Johnston, Ms. Osiander to look into this. As a result, I'd like to follow the lead of the people who spent the time trying to understand it. But I would like to ask the administration, and I don't want to get into a debate on the substance of this thing, but I want to understand sections 4 and section 5 and the effective dates. And that's key to my understanding.
Well, we don't need, this is what I would suggest we do. The administration just now said that 14F is not critical. So my recommendation is, because the motion is before the body and it can't be withdrawn, the body needs to vote on it. And my suggestion is that we vote no on the amendment, and then if Mr. Starr wants to make an amendment to remove, then we can have a separate motion to amend.
We had 13.
Could I just ask unanimous consent on taking F off, and then we're done with it?
Sure.
I'll make such a motion. I request unanimous consent to take item 14F from the agenda tonight and hear it in the ordinary course on the 29th.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Ms. Drummond has seconded. And I'll ask if there's any opposition to taking 14F off the changed order of the day. Hearing and seeing none, 14F is off the... I know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll wait on E until...
Coffey amendment now means that under the Coffey amendment, the Starr amendment now is to remove 14 Well, but he's amended this, he has made an amendment to Starr's amendment to take 14F off of Starr's amendment. And now the question is, do we remove 14E from the changed order of the day? And I will ask you to vote on that. If you vote yes, that means that we do not consider 14E tonight. If you vote no, then we will consider 14E tonight as part of the changed order of the day.
What are we doing? Can we have conferred from the...
I'm sorry.
What do we need to clarify this with the clerk?
I accepted Mr. Coffey's friendly to take F off. Well, then I revise my motion to take F off,
So are we voting on your motion again?
which is leave to take E out.
Just let me, hold on, give me a minute with it. Remove, it was about to remove F from the proposed amendment.
No.
Right, now we're going to vote again. Do I need to click in, or are we okay? All right, yeah, vote again, and no keeps E on the changed order of the day, and yes takes it off. Dr. Selcraig. No takes it off the changed order of the day. No keeps E on the changed order of the day, and yes takes it off the changed order of the day. Drummond?
Yes.
All right. That motion fails 5-4. All right, so the order of the day as changed is now 14C. Oh, wait, now the motion before us is whether to change the order of the day to have 14C, 14D, 14E, 14K, 14L, and 14O. And I would ask to please vote yes, changes the order today to take those matters up. And no would not take those, would be opposed to that. And that motion passes by a vote of 8-1.
Point of personal privilege, sir. I'd like to be excused.
Mr. Starr, your
personal reasons for that. If I need to be unexcused, I'm okay with that.
I'm not sure I understand. You'll have to explain. Well,
For Mr. Starr?
no, wait.
Yes, ma'am.
May I ask a question to Mr. Starr? Mr. Starr, are you...
Hold on, just a moment. Dr. Selcraig, if you want to ask Mr. Starr a question, you can certainly ask.
I'm concerned about how we're proceeding because, Mr. Starr, I'm wondering, are you choosing to leave because you think this is an inappropriate meeting?
I'm upset with my actions that may occur under the guise of an inappropriate meeting. That's correct.
And I get one of my concerns, based on the comments that you've made so far, is that you may challenge this meeting?
No, I just can't act under the guise of that in an effective manner, so my performance is compromised.
But if this body is established that it is an appropriate meeting, you're in conflict with that.
Correct.
And because you're in conflict with that ruling, you want to leave?
I can't act appropriately on the issues in front of me. That's correct. So I'm unable to do my duties as an assembly member with that pressure.
I would hope that our chair's listening. I think that this is Mr. Chairman?
Point of inquiry, if I might, of order, the citizen.
Actually, Mr. Kendall, I'm not recognizing you.
It seems to me that it would be better to have our conversations on, with the body of the whole, because I think that
and
we're
I'm fine
engaged.
for recess, sir, if you'd like to call one, but it's up to you.
I don't. Why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Somebody could call Mr. Starr back in.
He's here, and I
All right.
believe we have a
I'm going to call the meeting back into order.
maybe you want to talk.
With regard to item 13E, that is a subject of discussion, and Mr. Starr wants us not to act on 14E. I apologize. I would ask, because the question is whether there is sufficient urgency to necessitate us acting on it tonight. I've asked the opinion of Ms. Tucker, Assembly Legal Counsel, as well as Mr. Reeves, Municipal Attorney. Do you both have the same opinion about whether we've made a sufficient finding to take up 14E tonight? Mr. Reeves.
Mr. Chair, I was counting on hearing from Ms. Tucker.
All right,
first.
Ms. Tucker, do you have an opinion about whether there's been a sufficient record to allow us to address 14E tonight?
Yes, I do.
And your opinion is that we
My
can't?
opinion is that the record is not sufficient to waive the 24-hour notice requirement.
Thank you. And Mr. Reeves, are you in concurrence with Ms. Tucker's opinion?
Mr. Chair, I recognize that there's a legitimate argument and that there's therefore some significant risk on the question.
All right. Based on that, I would entertain a motion to reconsider Mr. Starr's motion. Actually, the clerk has made a good idea. Let's just start with a new motion. Dr. Selcraig, make your motion.
I would like to remove from the order of the day. I'd like to remove from the order of the day 14E.
Okay, that's fine. It's been moved and seconded to remove 14E, seconded by Mr. Coffey. Based on that legal opinion, is there any opposition to removing 14E from the agenda for today? Hearing and seeing none, we are not going to take up 14E. That leaves us now with 14C, D, K, L, and O.
Mr. Chairman.
Move
to add 14H.
And what's the urgency as to 14?
The urgency is we have a gentleman that had to suffer through a full evening with us last night, and he's here this evening to speak to that item. It's a fairly straightforward Potter Valley.
This is what I would be willing to do. I would be willing, because he has been, and I recognize him from last night, I would be willing to open the public hearing on that so he could testify but not have us act on that. That's what I would suggest, because no one has identified as that one that we must vote on tonight. But if he's here for the public hearing and he's waited, I'm receptive to giving him a chance.
I second Mr. Birch's motion to add H.
All right.
I don't know why we need to.
There's a move to add H. Moved by Mr. Birch, seconded by Mr. Coffey. And any discussion on this matter? Hearing and seeing any opposition to adding 14H? I hear, Ms. Drummond, turn them.
And I would request that you would extend that public hearing to the next meeting.
We would do that, but we wouldn't do it until we open the public hearing. We have to open it first before we can extend it. But yes, that certainly would be anticipated by everyone. Okay. Any opposition to adding 14H? Hearing and seeing none, that is added. All right. So
let's move.
Is there any opposition to the changed order of the day as discussed that includes H? Hearing and seeing none, we now have a new changed order of the day. That brings us to 14C, item AO 2008-79, an ordinance authorizing the long-term lease between Municipality of Anchorage as lessor and Jansen Hangars LLC as lessee of the westerly 150 feet of lots 5-9, Block 1, Merrillfield, Subdivision, 3rd Edition, located...
Waive reading.
Thank you very much. The public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard on 14C, item 2008-79, please come forward.
Paul D. Kendall, and again, I would raise the issue that I'm not certain of what the discussion is. We have not been privy to it, and in the process of raising that issue, I'd like to kind of go back to square one here, ladies and gentlemen. I bear no ill will. I'm a simple man. I'm simply trying to understand how the process works, and I have the highest regard for Mr. Coffey and many of you. But tonight, I've been denied a right to have a chair, and when I tried to find out from the guard back there, he told me that the city clerk...
Please stay on topic.
Pardon?
I'd like
Point of order, sir. Ma'am?
Go ahead, Mr. Starr.
We'd like to encourage the speakers to stay on task. Could you do that? Because this topic is being addressed as an approval of a lease term, and this is
yes. Go ahead, Mr. Kendall, on topic, or I'll stop you again.
Sure. And again, I apologize for being just a simple citizen wanting to participate in the process and not understanding entirely and not being able to see what happens.
Mr. Kendall, either talk about the lease or I'm going to stop your public testimony.
Well,
do you have anything to say about this lease?
Well, what are we leasing it for?
Okay. It's an airplane hangar. If you have something to say.
For somebody, well, I tried to make the point that we're not being privy to be able to see the discussion was my, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Kendall, I'm going to find you out of order. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Your seat.
I'd like to make a comment. I'd just like to point out, Mr. Kendall, the entire packet is out on the wall. Everything that we go through, everything that's before us is available to you. It's all those documents are on the wall. I'm not asking you a question. I'm just responding. So when you say you're not privy to the information that we have before us, what you need to do is you need to construct your own binder based on what's out there, and then you can move through it with us, and it won't be such a surprise to you.
Thank you. And Mr. Kendall, it's also online and has been for several days. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Yes, sir. Move to approve.
Moved by Dr. Selcraig. Are we online? Are we on task on this? Or are we off?
Who?
It looks like Mr. Starr moved and Dr. Selcraig moved and Mr. Birch seconded. And Ms. Handyside, there's an amendment that the administration worked out with Mr. Flynn. Do you have that available? It's coming with Mr. Abbott. This is an amendment that Mr. Flynn worked out with the administration, and I do know from conversations with Mr. Flynn that the amendment that's being distributed is one that has both Mr. Flynn's support and the administration's support.
Thank you.
Anybody that wants to. Mr. Birch, look like you're making the amendment?
Yes, I'd move the amendment on line 22. We are to add the following after the word hangar building, quote, with aircraft access to the hangar building only from the airport side of the hangar building. And I believe that was discussed with Mr. Lundaby, and that is okay, correct?
And that's been seconded by Ms. Drummond. Any discussion as to Mr. Starr speaking to the amendment?
No, I'll support it. I actually entered the discussion with Mr. Flynn on several factors, and to put it on the ordinance side of the language to me is a little bit out of ordinary. Normally we incur it in the informational packet. I'm okay with it because I believe the petitioner is, but it's a specific property use statement that's a little bit challenging where it may be contrary to the zoning. The property that the hangar building is built on is zoned I-1. We in an ordinance routine can't override what I believe to be property rights designated by zoning. So my advice was to be careful where we did that. My experience has also been that there's an airport master plan approved for the district, and I would want to make sure that by putting this in there, we're not contrary to an airport master plan design, that they may have other restrictions such as height or vegetation buffers. And being a member of that advisory commission back in planning and zoning days, it's a very extensive document. They have a board. They do a good job there. So, I'm speaking in support of it, but also note a caution that we're overruling an industrial zoning when we're doing this. So I also would caution that is it appropriate to put it on the front of the ordinance or to submit it in language that may specify better use in the area of the informational memorandum attached. So I'll support it, but with caution that we're overriding zoning.
Thank you. Ms. Drummond.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I think that was my seconding of the motion.
Okay.
But if you do want me to speak on this issue,
No,
I think it's...
You did want to be.
I was also party to conversation with Mr. Flynn, and I believe that the lesser of this property wants to be a good neighbor, and they have agreed to this restriction on their property, and I think it's appropriate.
Thank you. No one else is in the queue. As to the amendment, I'll ask if there's any opposition to the amendment. I hear and see no opposition. That amendment is approved unanimously. And next, as to the Assembly ordinance as amended, I see no one in the queue. Any opposition to approval of AO 2008-79, item 14C? Hearing and seeing none, that item is approved unanimously. That brings us next to item 14D, AO number 2008-144, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage reappropriating $1,500,000 of federal highway grant funds. Thank you very much. The public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard, please come forward.
Oh, jeez. I have to bring my wheelchair. Well, I would rise to the issue on this. It would seem to me, ladies and gentlemen, that when you look at the rising cost of energy, shouldn't everybody be paying attention to the citizens? I guess isn't that something that goes with the job?
Handle, it's all recorded. Go ahead.
Pardon?
It's all being recorded. Go ahead. If you have your chance to speak.
Well, Mr. Coffey and the others aren't here. Is that the appropriate way that we would deal with that? I'm just trying to find out how this works.
You know perfectly well how it works. Go ahead and say what you have to say as to this appropriation.
I think that's a bit presumptive on your part. But if I might, it would seem to me, ladies and gentlemen, that again we continue to come back to responsible leadership here. Right now, we're having a terrible struggle with energy. That energy is impacting us in many, many different sectors now. And to spend this money on roads as opposed to some new energy form, some joint venture with a hydrogen fuel capacity or electric cars or something of that nature that enables us to take better care of our roads and less endangerment of life and the quality of air, I might add. And there are other public, many entities around the nation and the world are now doing that. For you to outlay money for some of these streets things, which we all know is a public trough. It's been that way since I was a child. It's a way to move certain amounts of money and control the actions of others by certain intersection designs. And by the way, can you tell me at 1 minute intervals so that I know when my time is where it's at, Mr. Chairman?
Got a minute and 20 seconds. That's
a minute and 20 seconds.
That's your last minute.
All right. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to show you something in reference to vehicles, if I might. For example, I was talking to
Mr. Kendall. I don't see how vehicles has anything to do with purchasing right away for Chester Creek trails. So I want you to stay on top.
I thought you said D was the Managed Engineering Department of Anchorage for damage. I thought we were talking about roads there.
The Anchorage Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Fund for design costs and right-of-way acquisition related to Chester Creek Trail. Well, you need to speak to trail.
You know, when a guy gets senior, there's just those moments he just kind of, it's
okay, let's get to the trails. Speak to trails.
Well, I think we should have these types of vehicles for the trails that are longer lasting. This is an air car that has a 1,000-mile capacity going to be introduced next year. And I thank you so much because as an older man, it's difficult for us to participate as fully as we could have in our youth. And I'm going to sit down and thank you for your indulgence of a senior citizen just attempting to know his government and the warm and wonderful leaders that you are. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Anyone else wishing to be heard on 14D, please come down. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
It's been moved by Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Mr. Coffey. I see no one in the queue. I will ask if there's any opposition to approval of item 14D. Hearing and seeing no opposition, that matter is approved unanimously. That brings us next to item 14H. Number 2008-73, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage creating Special Assessment District 08-10 for the construction of a gas line extension to serve the Potter Heights subdivision area and determining to proceed with proposed implements there. And I was almost done. And I see you've been waiting patiently, sir. Come down and speak to 14H.
My name is Daryl Krolik, and my neighbors and I have been working diligently to extend a gas line to our homes. Right now we heat with fuel oil and propane. So, you know, this is just a very simple thing, and we've been working with the Muni and NSTAR to create this GID. So we needed the $46,000, and they put it before you. So I just urge you to vote yes on it, and we needed to kind of get the thing rolling so we can get it in there for this 08 construction season. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And you understand from what I'd said earlier, because this is not viewed as time critical, we won't act on it tonight, but we'll take it up at the next meeting.
Yeah, well,
this means you don't have to come down and talk with us again.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Birch has a question, and Mr.
I just had a question. It is a time-critical item, and, I guess my question is, why can't we act on this evening?
I agree.
I mean, just the administration didn't identify it as a time-critical item because it was not on their short list, but we've obviously got a member of the public is trying to get this work done this summer, and it's the middle of July.
Mr. Birch, is it your belief as one of our South Anchorage representatives that this is time-critical?
It is.
All right, so your recommendation is that we close the public hearing and act. Okay.
Correct.
And Ms. Johnston is in the queue.
I just echo Mr. Birch.
All right, and Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not wishing to slow this down, but I want to ask people to consider, was there anyone else here last night ready to testify on this issue? And might there be anyone testifying in opposition to this project?
The only other person was here last night was in favor.
Okay. It's just the same issues that were raised before is with the nature of this meeting, the public may or may not have adequate access. If it really is a time-critical issue, and it sounds like a great idea to me, I would have no opposition to it. Just for our own protection, I would urge caution.
Well, we had 70% approval, anyway, so.
In other words, there's a petition that was.
It's strongly supported.
Okay. Any other questions for this gentleman? I don't see anyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Kendall's here. Mr. Kendall, you'll be pleased to know this actually involves energy, so you might be able to stay on topic.
Well, first I want to thank the gentleman for allowing me to participate in the public hearing that's so near and dear to all of us. And if he's still here, I don't want to look around there, but I might lose time on my 3 minutes. But a moment ago, I brought up the air car to you that's going to be introduced in the 2010 for $18,000 with 1,000 miles.
The air car has nothing to do with the
adjoined to that, adjoined to that is I'm getting there. Adjoined to that, ladies and gentlemen, is Honda is introducing a fuel cell.
Mr. Kendall, Honda is off topic. This is about a gas line extension on residential property.
I know, and I'm rising in support of the gas line for this reason. The public is being moved to what they call home refueling distribution systems. Those systems are going to take natural gas, which makes 95% of all the known hydrogen, and they're going to be converting that hydrogen from natural gas at the home. And in addition to that, for this gentleman's information and the people they intend to serve, there's a product called Fill, which fits in your garage, made by Fuel Maker, and allows you to take natural gas and put it into your Honda GSX natural gas, which T. Boone Pickens had to do instead of our government, which Bob Brinker's called clowns in his area. He's now suggesting we move to natural gas, which I'm opposed to fossil fuels. But in this gentleman's case here, I had hoped to give some insight to such an eloquent body of such large capacity of indulgence, as I might add. I thank you. I'll retire myself and hope that this gentleman would allow me to make the comment that helps him in some way in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kendall. Anyone else wishing to be heard, please come down. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. What is the wish of the body? Mr. Birch, hold on. Mr. Birch has moved.
Second.
And Mr. Gutierrez has seconded to approve this. Dr. Selkrig, go ahead.
I just had a question, and maybe the administration can answer it. What's this? This is NSTAR gas. That will be, and is what's happening is that this NSTAR gas, does this pipeline or does this connection result in kind of a more direct access or kind of a, do they get it before the people in East Anchorage get it? I mean,
they get it before they build a boat.
I mean, well, I know we have an issue of less and less gas, and so I'm just wondering how the allocations work as we all pay the same rates, or is this going to affect the rest of the system?
Dr. Selkrig, through the chair. This is a method that we can, the property owners can extend the gas line up to their property and wind up paying for it through a improvement district that's provided through Title 19, I believe. It doesn't change anything to any of the other properties in the municipality. It'll just simply a way for these property owners to extend the gas line to their area, and then will be billed by NSTAR, and the property owners will repay the municipality for the cost.
So basically, they're just getting access to gas like everyone else in the municipality.
That's correct.
Thanks very much. That's helpful.
I see no one else in the queue. Just a question for the administrator. Actually, Mr. Coffey, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I have been less than diligent. I generally support my colleagues on something like this. We've had a caution from the Assembly Attorney about the 24-hour rule. If you look at the AM 360-2008 on line 5, there was an objection by one property owner. I echo Mr. Gutierrez's concern on this, and in an abundance of caution, I just want to ask Mr. Birch and Ms. Johnston, and I'll defer to them generally, but I would hate to see us get in this mess over one property owner when putting this till the 29th. I don't know if they can still make construction or whatever. It's just caution. It's the lawyer in me, if you would, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure who is best to respond there. Do you have a response on that in terms of timeline for the work?
No, I don't, as far as time work with NSTAR, how long it would take them to get the pipe in the ground. I don't know what their schedule is. There was one person that voted opposed to the petition. There were 14 in favor and 5 abstained.
Okay.
Or did not vote.
Mr. Birch, either question or would you respond to Mr. Coffey?
My response to Mr. Coffey is that be my preference that we press on. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Selcraig.
I'm interested in having the applicant, the gentleman who spoke originally, come to. I have some questions for you. My sense is that the Assembly as a whole wants to be supportive of this project, and there's this concern because of the nature of our meeting tonight and the questions about its noticing that items that come before us could be challenged, potentially could be challenged in court. So our concern that we're looking at here is if we were to approve it tonight, say the one person who did not want to support this could in fact bring a legal action saying that this was not an appropriate process. I think that there's a desire to want to support this project and not make it late. So what's your position if this project, if our approval was put off by 2 weeks, would it be detrimental to the process? I mean, weighing against the option of potentially having a legal problem?
I don't know the likelihood of legal action. I imagine it's fairly unlikely. But I think that, it's hard to determine the construction season. I can't speak for NSTAR or how long would it take to get the process through, once you approve funding, then how long will it take for you to get your agreement with NSTAR? I think actually the agreement with NSTAR is almost there. It's just that I don't know how long until the money comes in.
Well, it wouldn't take us very long to get the agreement, and then they could start the construction in the
So I guess I'm interested in your thoughts in terms of in your interests. What would seem the best path from your perspective?
Well, I would hate to stop our process by being sued, but I don't. Actually, the person who opposed this, I have never heard of. They don't live up there. I know that. So,
Will they be? I guess will they be assessed?
Yes, they will.
Against their wishes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apparently.
I would just note as a procedural matter, Ms. Johnston is next in the queue. I would just note as a procedural matter, as a body, we're having a discussion about whether to delay it. It's in front of the body. The public hearing is closed, and we can. I'll let you continue your questioning. I'm just noting that we can if there isn't a motion to continue our deliberation, we do act tonight. Go ahead, Dr. Selkirk.
Well, I'm in terms of making up my decision about how to act here, I'm very interested in the applicant's comfort with the risk. And so I guess that's my question to you is, if you were going to advise me in terms of what you thought was in your best interest for this project, would you prefer that we wait 2 weeks and then finalize our decision then, or proceed this evening, based on the discussion that we've had so far?
I think there's some discomfort amongst your group as to the possibility of being sued. So if it's more likely in 2 weeks that this will pass, then I'm much more comfortable with that.
Thanks for that feedback. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Johnston.
I was just going to echo Mr. Birch. I feel that your exposure to a lawsuit is minimal because your assessment it's about $2,300, I think, per property owner, I think most folks would think long and hard before they had a legal challenge for that amount of money.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we delay our consideration of this matter until the meeting of the 29th.
Been moved by Mr. Gutierrez and seconded by, actually it looks like, well, could Mr. Clear-Jackson, you could unclick your withdraw so Mr. Gutierrez could click in and then you can second.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what I was going to say, and I hit the first motion button, was that, first off, I agree totally with Mr. Coffey and Mr. Gutierrez. And I was going to move to reopen the public hearing and then continue it until the meeting of the 29th.
That's a good idea.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, I think actually, Ms. Gray-Jackson, Mr. Gutierrez made a motion, and so I think he made the first motion, and so we need to, is there a second for Mr. Gutierrez's motion? I'm not trying to, well, was there a second? I didn't hear a second. Okay, now Ms., I agree, I'm just making sure because sometimes she, anyway, so Ms. Gray-Jackson now moving to continue the public hearing.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. The public hearing was closed, so my motion is to reopen it and then continue it until the meeting of the 29th.
Second.
All right. Moved by Ms. Gray-Jackson, seconded by Mr. Gutierrez. Mr. Birch, did you want to speak to that motion?
You know, we're going to be here for another 3 hours tonight. I'm just telling you that I'm leaving. I have other obligations here, and so I'm going to be gone within the half an hour. So I would suggest that we wrap this up so we can at least have something on the we've done it list. And I think this would be nice to have this on the we've done it list. I object to, stringing these folks along for another 2 weeks. The clerk has told us and the attorneys have told us that the meeting was properly noticed and brought forward. So, let's move on. And I object to having this thing delayed further.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand Assemblymember Birch's frustration, but I use a phrase I just used with Mr. Stars. I think we have go fever, and that's something that we refer to in aviation. A pilot just wants to go so badly, they fly into conditions that they really never should fly into. And there are a lot of dead pilots who knew there was no risk, who knew the risk was minimal, and had go fever, and so they did it. And I just think that we have a risk here, and it's worth taking some time.
All right, so the motion on the floor, and I know it's not going to be unanimous, we're going to start voting, and the motion is whether to reopen the public hearing and hear the matter further on July 25th. A yes vote continues, a no vote, and we will proceed and act on this tonight. Please vote.
A no vote as we proceed tonight?
No vote proceeds tonight. Yes vote continues on the 29th. And that motion to continue passes 5. So that fails, so we go forward tonight. The question,
You misstated what you said to us. You misstated. You misstated.
no, yes means you continue, but you have to get 6 votes because it's not the majority here. You have to get a majority of the body. I did not misstate. The majority of the votes was to continue, but we need not 5 votes because that's a minority of the body. It's not a majority of the quorum, it's a majority of the body. So the motion fails 5-4.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Anyway, Mr. Birch has called the question, and did you have an issue other than...
Mr. Chairman, my point of order is this. Should this matter fail because of the sense that we should continue it, what will be the consequences of that? I just caution folks to think about that. Thank you. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Please vote. A yes vote approves this improvement district, and a no vote does not approve this improvement district. Please vote. And that passes 7-2. All right. That brings us next to item 13K. Number 2008-132, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, accepting and appropriating 3 State of Alaska Clean Water Fund loan offers in the aggregate amount of $2,250,000 for financing a portion of the cost of the Sand Lake Sewer Extension, pump station upgrades, and Eagle River wastewater treatment facility improvement projects. The public hearing in this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard, please come forward.
Paul D. Kendall, and I'm really in a hurry to get out of here. And if you don't let me talk, I'm going to leave. Well, this is a joke. Never mind. Well, I would rise with strong concerns here. And the reason that I would rise again on this is that anytime we come to water, I think we're going to have to take a very, very close on our expenditures. It appears that most of the fuels, again, ladies and gentlemen, are headed towards water-based technologies and energies. As I tried to mention to you last night, there will be over 52 hydrogen-fueled vehicles entering the market.
Mr. Kendall, this is about a sewer extension in Sand Lake and Eagle River. You need to speak to sewers in Sand Lake and Eagle River, not about hydrogen vehicles.
No, I'm talking about the capital expenditure you're about to expend for water, what we would call a water treatment or a discharge water, right? I mean, that's what it is, right? And what I'm trying to tell you is that water is a complete cycle. It is a fundamental need or you die within 3 to 5 days. And part of that process is tied to the single-family home. And what I'm trying to get you to do is to be able to draw some attention to that, to realize that if we continue to just automatically stamp these programs without realizing some type of a larger picture, some formula, some understanding of what that helps our families survive, so there isn't more stress that tends to crowd social services and all those things which crowd us into more and more expenditures against our will, that it's an exercise in futility. So what I'm trying to do is to heighten your awareness, especially Mr. Coffey's, because I know he's very, very interested in this, about how important what you call water is really a hydrogen-based fuel. And the entire world is now moving towards its importance. And Alaska is reaching...
Hydrogen-based fuel doesn't have anything to do with sewer extensions in Eagle River and Sand Lake, so please stick to the topic.
Well, I will convey respect for your judgment, sir, being a more educated and eloquent speaker than myself and willing to stand while I couldn't sit with me, and I didn't see the rest of them do that, and especially with a senatorial candidate, I kept looking to see. Of course, he's not here tonight, is he?
But you're off topic.
And
Speak to sewers in Sand Lake and Eagle River.
I will sit, and I've enjoyed the personalities as we go along here. The various.
Right, thank you, Mr. Kendall. That's enough. You're not on topic. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to be heard as to 14K? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. What is the wish of the body? Mr. Birch has moved, and Ms. Johnston has seconded to approve. I'll ask if there's any opposition to approval of 14K. Hearing and seeing none, that matter is approved unanimously. That brings us next to 14L. Item 2008-133, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, accepting and appropriating 3 State of Alaska Drinking Water Fund loan offers in the aggregate amount of $1,200,000.
Waive reading.
Thank you very much. Public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard, please come forward.
Can I get you to get the reading for me? Because, or is the public allowed for that?
Aggregate amount of $1,200,000 for financing a portion of the costs of the Sand Lake Water Extension South Addition Phase 4 and 68 Pebblebrook Baby Bear Water Upgrade projects.
Well, I would simply remind the council again of what seems to be coming at us like a freight train, and that is the fact that we have to have a heightened awareness of what you folks call water, which is really a primitive term for a more fundamental fuel that we all require. And I hope that when you make these expenditures, you realize I see no formula or accountability attached to this, and yet you pass IM laws that allow us to pollute our environment. And I'll sit down, and I thank you, and I'll retire my gracious amount of time given to me at your all's discretion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing on 14L is closed. What is the wish of the body? Moved by Ms. Gray Jackson, seconded by Dr. Selcraig. Any opposition to approval of 14L? Hearing and seeing none, that matter is approved unanimously. That brings us to our last item on the agenda tonight, item 14O. And I will read it the whole way so Mr. Kendall has the benefit of hearing the whole thing.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. We conduct our business, and when reading is waived without objection, you're free to do so. These are printed and available to Mr. Kendall or any other member.
You're right, Mr.
We should
Coffey.
not kowtow to people who are obstructionists. Thank you.
2008-137, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage accepting Federal Transit Administration Section 5309 bus and bus-related earmark allocations. I'll get the other amount in so it's clear, $238,000. I will accept the waiver. Anyone wishing to be heard, the public hearing is open.
You know, I want to thank you, Paul D. Kendall. I thank you so much for being such a gracious body, such a humble citizen. And you know, when I hear the words used like kowtow,
okay, Mr. Kendall, you need to speak to these public transit.
I would speak to this in some kowtowing fashion, if I might, sir, and that is that Ford and BP are now engaged in a partnership in what they call HICE, which is a hydrogen internal combustion.
Mr.
No, I'm speaking. No, I'm not off topic. You're talking about funding for buses.
You're off topic.
You're talking about funding for buses. Am I incorrect about that?
Funding for buses, and they're specific buses, so you need to speak to what's before us.
Right. You're talking about. Am I mistaken about that? You're talking about funding for buses. Is that correct?
No.
If I'm incorrect about.
We have a paratransit operations and maintenance center.
Yeah, paratransit is a guy taking those people around. They spend a lot of money. They call up. We personally haul them somewhere for hours on end, and they contract the service every year, I think, in the city, don't they? I'm a legit, Well, my point I was trying to make with you is that British Petroleum and Ford are partnershiping with what they call HICE, hydrogen internal combustion engines, by BMW and Ford.
That's where you fall off topic. This is about building a place for maintenance of these anchor ride vehicles. It has nothing to do with Ford.
No, I'm trying to tell you that in allocating these funds for these projects, you need to be aware that you should be out there joint venturing. When you allocate these funds, you need to ask them, are we developing any new projects for energy so we're not running emissions programs? And that's my comment. And I think it is doggone well pertinent. And I'd stand on that. Thank you. Now sit down and get the next one's audience participation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kendall. Anyone else wishing to be heard on this matter, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. What is the wish of the body? Moved by Mr. Starr, seconded by Mr. Gutierrez. Mr. Starr, you're in the queue.
Just quickly, Mr. Abbott, are we getting close to finishing the paratransit upgrades?
Sorry.
Yes, we expect the building to be occupied in beneficial occupancy by the 15th of September, I believe.
Will there be more funding requirements through our body?
I'm not aware of any, but there could be contract amendments. I'm not sure, but there's no additional funds required.
We're on budget, though, and everything's looking good over there. So it's a great move. And
Yeah, you
transit-
guys, if you're interested, we'd be glad to show you around. It's a new
No, it's just
facility.
appropriate. Transit is a big issue, and we've got to make sure our fleet runs really good. So I'm all in support of it, and I know it's an issue, but we've invested in those public facilities to help our transit department, and let's keep it up. Thanks.
Thank you. No one else is in the queue. I'll ask if there's any opposition to approval of item 14O. Hearing and seeing none, that motion is approved unanimously. That is the last item on the agenda. Mr. Birch.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted just a moment to congratulate our fellow Assembly member Jennifer Johnston on the occasion of her 29th birthday this very day. Congratulations.
I could not think of a better way to spend it.
Boy,
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Audience participation.
Is there any opposition to the motion to adjourn? Hearing and none, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
You've been participating all night.